Hello and welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratore. It's great to be back with a new State Matters. It's hard to believe it's been over a year. For today's show, we will continue to discuss the current state of COVID-19, to include where we are with testing and vaccine distribution here in our community. In addition, we will review how the role of the state government impacted town government during this year-long crisis. Joining me in this discussion is the Chair of the Plymouth Select Board, Ken Tavares, the Chair of the Board of Health for Plymouth, Dr. Barry Potvin, and the Director of Public Health for the Town of Plymouth, Karen Keane. Thank you all for joining me today. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Matt.
Good, thank you.
So, Ken, let's start with you. You know, Ken, you've been involved in this community as a leader for several decades now. You've been on the board for well over 25 years as a selectman. You're born and raised in this community. You're with your wife. You have a son. You have grandchildren. How has this year been compared to all the other years that you've been involved in this community?
Well, Matt, it doesn't compare to anything that I've experienced up until a year ago. I've told countless people that when we realized what we were into, we didn't have a playbook. And I think it has taken great cooperation between the state and the federal government and all of those involved, to try to put us on the right course. There have been so many things that we've decided on, thought were, the proper way to go, and then had to change at the last minute. I will say, though, that the cooperation amongst the elected leaders of the community and staff members has been excellent. People are working and working hard and trying to make sure we get all of this under control. And I do believe we are succeeding thanks to that cooperation where no one is looking for a silver medal or a gold medal. They're saying we have to work together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think we have done that well here in this community. And thank you for your leadership as well. Because of that, I think because of your leadership, that's the reason why. You were also president of the Plymouth 400, and Plymouth 400 was going to have a big year. How has that been impacted in your life and in the role of Plymouth 400?
Well, I think there was certainly some disappointment a year ago. We had been working on festivities and events for 10 years and realized that they weren't going to happen. But through the executive committee, the professional staff of Plymouth 400, we had to retool what was going on, and a number of events have taken place on Zoom, and as a matter of fact, we have one that's coming up later today at 5:30 for the One Small Candle event. We are still moving forward, and we're learning a lesson. What happened in this community 400 years ago with the Pilgrims landing here in the month of December compares to what we're experiencing today with the pandemic. The comparisons are actually frightening at times, but I think all in all, we're trying to move forward and mark the 400th commemoration of our founding.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me move to Dr. Barry Potvin. Barry, you've been involved with the Board of Health now, but really recently, in the middle of this, became chair. But for those folks out there that don't know who you are, can you just give a little bit of background who you are?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. I actually moved to Plymouth back in 2017. I had spent decades in the New York City area, which was tough for someone who was a Boston sports fan, obviously. Mostly working at the Columbia Medical School, doing research at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, doing research, and serving as a professor at Yeshiva University, where I taught pre-medical students, mostly public health, epidemiology, microbiology, genetics, and biochemistry. So I was a busy guy while I was living there. Always wanted to come back to Massachusetts. It's my home. It's always been my home. It always will be my home, no matter where I ended up living in the interim. So when I first came to Plymouth, I was looking for something that I could do to contribute to the town. And I thought, given my background, at the encouragement of several people, that the Board of Health was an ideal landing spot for me. Certainly since the last year it has turned out to be, I could never have foreseen what was going to happen during the last year. It certainly has been an incredibly challenging time, especially to be the chair of the Board of Health. It's been stressful at times, it's been frustrating at times, but it's been fulfilling all the time, simply because it really seems like we're doing something really worthwhile for the town.
Yeah, and so I guess the first question then, Barry, is have you switched over to Boston sports? Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, Celtics?
Matt, I never left being a Boston sports fan,
Okay,
no matter
good.
where I lived. And it caused me quite a bit of harassment when I was living in the New York area. But I'm a tough New Englander whose ancestry goes back to 1635.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they won't change me. I remain really keep my New England accent too
Yeah.
after all these years.
Yeah. Well, you've been a very steady hand as chair of the Board of Health. You went from vice chair to being chair, and as you said, it's been pretty challenging. But you seem to have done it with somewhat ease. What has been the most challenging part of what you've been doing over the last several months as chair?
Well, part of it was just trying to keep up with the massive influx of data and guidelines and governor's orders, and so many things go on and change so very quickly. So I'm spending easily half my waking hours trying to keep up with all that. And it's at times things that I even end up dreaming about, and waking up and trying to problem solve them. Not much I can do independently, but I certainly do my best to do everything I can.
And of course, it's a volunteer role. Did you ever once think, why am I doing this?
Not for the past year since I've been the chair. I know why I'm doing it. I think it's worthwhile. It does entail making sacrifices. It does for all of us. Like everybody else, I haven't done any traveling at all. Haven't been anywhere. I've been keeping to myself with a few close friends and family members.
Yeah.
And even then, I tend to be extremely cautious. You rarely see me out anywhere not wearing a mask.
Right.
If ever.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, particularly in the beginning, I know for myself personally, it was trying to find a purpose because we really couldn't go in there, couldn't do anything, and you want to help, but it's like, how can you? So it was really trying to find a purpose, and I think, doing what you're doing what Ken Tavares is doing, what Karen's doing, I think we all kind of found a purpose, and you've been a great guest on the COVID-19 shows that we've been doing as well. So we really appreciate that. Karen, I want to go to you for a minute. Karen, for the people that don't know you, except I think all the restaurants know who you are now, but for those other folks that don't know who you are, give a little bit of background of who Karen Keane is.
All right. I have lived in Plymouth for 16 years. For the start of my time here in Plymouth, I stayed home with my children while they were going to school. And then my husband works from home. So when the kids got older, my husband said, you got to do something, Karen, because, I keep bugging him. Let's go out to lunch. Let's do something. He's like, I have to work. You have to do something. So I did. And I got a part-time job at the library. And I worked at the library for 3 years, and then moved over to work at the health department here at the town hall. So I started at the health department as the part-time clerk. Then I went to full-time administrative assistant. Then I went and took all my classes so I could apply to be the health agent. And now I'm the health director. So I've been in the health department for 8 years. I'm also a town meeting member, served on lots of other committees through town meeting, and just am really happy to be here to serve the residents and visitors of Plymouth.
So how has the last year really changed your role as health director? I know you
Well,
smile, but it really has, hasn't it?
It really has. It really, really has. I became the health director in July, and then in February, we started hearing about the virus. So it was sort of like, you had to hit the ground running, which was great. And I had a lot of support from my administration, the town administration here. I had a lot of support from other people in the department. And I just, knew what we had to do, and we did it. And it was a lot of work and a lot of hours, but that wasn't just me. That was a huge team effort from a lot of people. And I think the number one thing is that no matter who we were working with, whether it was town administration, other town departments, state staff, the selectmen, everyone had the same goal, and that was to keep our residents and our visitors safe, and to educate our residents and our visitors so they knew what they could do to be safe in order to stop the virus. And I think that we've all worked really well together in order to do that.
Of course, this show is about why the state matters in the lives of people that live in the community. What are some of the pros, what are some of the cons of what the state has done to support you and support the community, or maybe not support the community? What could they have done better?
Well, a couple of things I think that the state has really exceeded on. Well, one would be you, Matt, to be honest, because to be honest though, because you've been there from the very beginning, working with Steve Trifletti, our town moderator, to set up those COVID-19. They started, I believe, at daily 12 o'clock meetings to really get information out there as quickly as we possibly can. Like Barry had said, that information was changing all the time, not necessarily even changing, but being added to. So it was so important that we had that method of communication for our residents. So I want to thank you, especially for that. I also would definitely have to thank Jana Ferguson, who is the Assistant Commissioner for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Twice a week, boards of health and departments of public health and other groups have a webinar. It is moderated by Jana, and it's to keep us posted on what's happening through the governor's office. And it's, again, all sorts of wonderful communication, standards, policies, procedures, things that we need to then take back to our residents to let them know about that. So I would have to say that part's been phenomenal. Again, Ron O'Connor, Director of the Office of Local and Regional Health. He's also on the group that meets with us twice a week with Jana. But what Ron does then is he takes that one step further. When those 2 phone calls are over, Ron does the follow-up. He sends the backup, the other information that we need based upon what was happening on those phone calls. Something that, again, we could break down and share with our businesses and our residents so that they know exactly what's happening in the current moment. I don't want to take up too much time, but one other thing I would love to mention is also the state's relationship with the Community Tracing Collaborative. And a lot of our residents have probably heard from the Community Tracing Collaborative. Those are the folks that the state contracted with to reach out to people who are confirmed cases of COVID or who have been named as a close contact of a confirmed case. And what this group did is they acted as a liaison for each health department. They would reach out to the people in our town who were confirmed cases or contacts. And over the course of a year, they have made 2 million phone calls and have supported 500,000 people from the state of Massachusetts. So I think that relationship is also one that has to be mentioned because it's been such a strong collaborative, and that came directly from the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, really good point. Ken, Karen brings up a good point that in the beginning, it was really trying to get communication out to everyone. I think you and I would agree, we've been doing these COVID shows since the beginning, you and I together, along with Steve Trifletti, and we're actually going to be coming up in May on our 100th show. How important has PAC TV been to this community?
I have said many times to the folks from PAC TV, I don't know where we would be today if they weren't able to provide the services that they have provided for a year. There has never been a phone call made to PAC where somebody said, we can't do that. That's impossible. The entire staff deserves accolades for everything that they have done. Communication would have been next to impossible without having PAC. So thank you, everyone at PAC TV.
Plus,
You are the
continue with
absolute best.
Plus, you were able to continue with town government as well because of PAC TV as well.
Well, that's
still get the
I
work
think
of the
that's
people
a
done.
very important point. If we weren't able to have the guidance of PAC TV, I don't know how we would have conducted a town meeting last year. We did 2 of them. We have a 3rd one coming up. The moderator has done an excellent job. You folks from the legislature have added tremendously to it, so that we have been able to continue government without disruption. And I think that's something that goes unforeseen by many people, not realizing that the government has never stopped functioning during this pandemic.
And that's important. That's an important factor to get out to people, that the government still needed to function and still needed to do the people's business.
Matt, if I could just add one thing, and that goes, we've been saying a lot of thank yous, but I'm looking at 3 people now on the screen that I have called you at all hours, from late at night to early in the morning. And I appreciate all that you've done, as our, I'll say, senior state representative, having been there the longest. It's been a pleasure, working with you, Barry. You're a wealth of information. And Karen, I don't know what to say. I think every time I open a conversation with you, I say, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour, but you've done a great job. And thank you again.
Ken, one takeaway from this last year, one thing you'll do differently now that you learned this last year that may be helpful in your professional or your personal life, what would that be?
I think I could probably name 100 things that I would do differently. I think that I want to care more and appreciate what I have. It is, I think we've all struggled with things that we've had to do and do differently and shift at the drop of a dime. What looks perfect and it's the right way to go, 1 minute changes. And then this has happened so many times, literally. So to be prepared for change is the one takeaway that I really feel strongly about.
Well said, Ken. Dr. Potvin, what's it looking like presently, health-wise here in Plymouth, and what do you see the future looking like in the next maybe 3 to 6 months?
Well, as you know, the Board of Health just met Wednesday night, and we discussed the current state of the COVID pandemic here in Plymouth. We do that all the time. We're constantly giving updates. To us, things look promising, and then all of a sudden things look not so promising. We saw the numbers going down, and then we saw the numbers plateauing, and then we saw the numbers starting to creep back up. Just making observations about what's going on in the town now that we have more pleasant, warm weather. And people are coming out in larger numbers, and we get worried because we see people sort of not taking the precautions seriously anymore. I think a lot of people think that they're done with the virus. Unfortunately, the virus is not done with us, and a lot of people are not considering the threat from all these new variants that are coming out. But of course, we have to. That's our role, and so we're looking to do anything we can, first of all, of course, to try to get Plymouth out of the red. We want to protect the health of our population without sort of damaging the economy as best as we can. We've built a pretty strong working relationship, I think, with the school system, and also with the hospital and with the select board, and certainly with all of you, our state representatives and senator. Again, thanks to all of you for your immediate responses to anything we ask for. I know that you're doing the best as you can to try to interact with the state on our behalf, much more than we could alone. I'm also trying to reach out to local communities more. I am the Plymouth representative to the state's local and regional public health advisory committee, which has had a meeting or two. And that's really run by Ron O'Connor. So we have a lot of contact with Ron. We're on guard all the time, watching what's happening, trying to find a way to make things better for the town and safer for the town and all of our visitors.
You've been instrumental in looking at a regional collaboration for our area and working with Kingston. Can you give us a little bit of an update, maybe where that stands?
We are in communication quite a lot with Kingston. The Kingston Collection Mall area was our pick for a regional vaccination site. We pursued that as strong as we possibly could, and I know that you and all the other representatives and the senator tried to help out with that as well. So far, as I heard on the update, that site is one of 14 still being considered by the Department of Public Health, and they expect that they'll make a decision on which of those 14 that they might add in the next 3 to 4 weeks when the vaccinations are open to everybody and the vaccine supply hopefully jumps up so that almost everybody that wants a vaccine can get it. We're anxiously waiting to hear. We haven't given up. We would probably at this point like to see the state also give us a pop-up testing site as they did down in Barnstable, in Yarmouth, because those communities have been going through a lot of the same things we have. That's sort of the current state of affairs, and we're hopeful.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much. Karen, as you heard, April 19th is the date that everyone will be eligible for vaccination, and we're hopeful that there'll be plentiful vaccinations available to everyone as well. What does it look like here in Plymouth for folks getting the vaccine right now? For our older population, are most of them done at this point? Where does that stand with our seniors, and how are you looking forward to April 19th?
Well, the good news is that our older population, 75 plus and 65 plus, of course, were the first two groups to go. So if we look at our numbers of people who have been vaccinated, those two groups are high, and that's wonderful. So now we're working on other groups, and on April 19th, when everyone's eligible, what we need is access. So that's the one hurdle that we've had from the beginning, is that we're willing and we're able to set up these facilities in order to both test and to vaccinate, but what we need is the supply. So once we have, the vaccine supply, like Barry said, we would work with Kingston to open up the Kingston collection. Our goal, of course, is to get as much vaccine into as many people as we possibly can, because of the foundation of things that you need to do to stop the virus, that's number 4. We've always talked about the big 3, which is wash your hands, wear a mask, and socially distance. Now we're going to add the 4th to that, which is be vaccinated. So that becomes the new foundation for what we need to do in order to fight the virus.
Karen, I'm going to ask you what I asked Ken, is what's your one takeaway that you've learned professionally and personally that maybe you'll do differently moving forward when we do get back to this new normal, whatever that looks like?
I love this town. I mean, I do, and I can't say enough for the business owners, the restaurant owners, the school department, all of the departments here at the town hall. I can't say enough about the Chamber of Commerce who have worked with us. What I noticed for the first time is that it was such a development at the beginning that I think I was so wrapped up in exactly what was happening that I didn't actually take a step back and look perhaps at the personal level of what was happening. I was so entrenched in just the process. We need to do this, and this. And then it was my mom who actually said something about her fears. And I was like, well, oh, what do you mean? And then having a conversation with her, I was like, okay, wait a minute. There's a human side to this. There's a scientific side, there's a public health side, but there's a human side. And I think that, once that happened, then I think I was open to a lot more ways of approaching things.
And I think, Karen, I may say that I think that's why you've been so effective in this community over the last year as well. It could be very contentious going into restaurants or stores or whatever to try to enforce some regulations, but because you realize that human side of everything, and like you said, working with Amy in the Chamber of Commerce and all that, there was such good communication that you were able to express what you needed to get across to people, and they were willing to do it. And there's really been no negative feedback because of that. So I think you really had done that well. Dr. Potvin, I want to ask you the same thing. What one thing have you that you've done this year that you've seen that you're going to do differently moving forward? I know you love these Zoom meetings, so maybe you'll be doing more of those. Right?
You know, I don't think any of us are going to escape the Zoom meetings for quite a long time.
I think you're right.
But what else could I do differently? Well, I wish I had started to work the way I am working now as the chair sooner than I was able to. I certainly think that it's invaluable having a lot of cooperation and collaboration, both here in the town and in a more widespread area. I've even reached out to the county commissioners to try to get them involved as well. What else could I personally do better? Well, I'd like to do a lot more than I've been able to do. Time doesn't permit us to get into a lot of other things. Certainly I developed, because I was volunteering at a food pantry that was run by the Coalition for the Homeless up in the Kingston, Plymouth border, gave me a much better appreciation for what all those people are going through.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some of them, you know, I really wanted to help more than I could.
Yep.
But it certainly has given me a different perspective.
Yeah,
and I know Karen shares this
now.
with me. We're very concerned about those people.
Yeah.
And food insecurity and housing insecurity,
Yep.
and how all of that makes them much more likely to suffer even more than we can imagine through this pandemic. So it gives you a lot of empathy. And I think that, you know, I'd like to be able to do more for them. Unfortunately, I had to stop volunteering because it was a personal risk. But both my wife and I will go back to doing that as soon as it's safe to.
I was going to say, you'll get back out there again. I know you well enough now to know you'll do that. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And once again, I want to thank Ken Tavares, Barry Potvin, Karen Keane for joining us today. I also want to give a big thanks again to PAC TV, not just for today's show, but what you've done over the years. You heard from this show. We couldn't have done this. We couldn't have communicated to the community without you. Big round of applause for all you. And thank you at home for watching, and we'll see you next time on State Matters.